So let's talk a little bit about storytelling and how storytelling can help you sell products. Here's a little story of my own. When I was on the board of directors at United Way of Southern Nevada in the 1990s, we had a person on the staff by the name of John Coleman. He did lots of things for United Way, but in my mind, his biggest talent was his ability to write warm fuzzies. Warm fuzzies are short stories that tug at the heartstrings and at the end of the day provide you with a warm, fuzzy feeling about doing good things, like donating to United Way. John was a great storyteller before storytelling was considered a great skill, but his value to the organization was obvious and important. I guess I've always been fascinated with storytelling. When I was a young child growing up in northern Illinois, in our household we listened to the radio every day before I went to school. One of the radio shows on every morning was Paul Harvey. From 1952 to 2008, his programs reached as many as 24 million people per week. That's right, folks. 24 million people when the population of the United States was around 190 million people. That was nearly 13% of the population listening to Paul Harvey on the radio nearly daily. Paul Harvey News was carried on 1,200 radio stations, 400 Armed Forces Network stations, and in over 300 newspapers. His most famous radio show was called The Rest of the Story. The rest of the story consisted of stories presented as little known or forgotten facts on a variety of subjects, with some key element of the story held back until the end. The broadcast always concluded with a variation of the tagline, "And now you know the rest of the story." They were always entertaining and always engaging. I'm going to play an example of one right now for you so you get the sense of what these were like. It was, like I said, always entertaining, and every morning left you with a reason to go to school.
The rest of the story. It was while on a business trip that Milton saw the tiny toy helicopter in the shop window. The paper tag on which the price was hand-inscribed said 50 cents, but there was something about that clever little plaything that made it especially worthwhile. It could fly, or at least so Milton surmised, noticing the attachment of rubber bands to its uncomplicated mechanism. Milton walked inside the shop. 50 cents for the little helicopter, he said to the clerk. "Well, yes," the clerk answered, "but you understand that it's a kit. It has to be put together." "Oh, that was particularly delightful," Milton exclaimed, and then he explained. He'd once been a school teacher, and from this experience he had retained some very specific ideas about education. The real challenge, he happily expounded, is winning a pupil's interest. Once he is fascinated with something, it would be impossible to prevent him from learning about it. "I take it you have children of your own," said the clerk. "Oh, yes," Milton answered, "grammar school age." He and his wife had encouraged them to read and ask questions and to think for themselves from the time they were quite small, and they liked nothing better than to build a little helicopter and watch it fly. Milton had always believed in the power of educational toys to stimulate intellect, and this particular one was among the best that he had ever seen. "And which model would you like?" the clerk asked. What were his choices, Milton wanted to know. "Oh, my goodness," answered the clerk. "There's one that rises to a height of 50 feet or so and then falls without harming itself. There's one that shoots upward about as high but then glides gently back to earth. There's one that ascends 25 feet and hovers in midair for as long as half a minute." Well, Milton purchased the model that seemed most intriguing, and he hurried home to Cedar Rapids, Iowa that afternoon, thoroughly pleased with himself for having discovered such a gift, and he was quite eager to present it. "What did you bring us, Daddy?" That was the familiar greeting at the door. "What did you bring us, Daddy?" And from behind his back, Milton, grinning broadly, produced this neatly wrapped toy. Well, the boys tore off the wrapping like frenzied predators. "Do you like it?" Milton asked hopefully. My, how they liked it. Well, after carefully assembling the little helicopter, they wound up its rubber band motor again and again and again, indoors that night, watching it rise and bob against the ceiling, outdoors the next morning, cheering as it soared to dizzying heights, as high as a tree, and then sailed back to them in lazy circles, Milton, convinced as he was of his educational theories, could never have imagined how correct he had been. This once. For you see, his two youngest sons were then ages 11 and 7. And they would remember all of the rest of their days that one day in the autumn of 1878, when their father brought them a little helicopter toy, a 50-cent plaything, ostensibly, and yet a plaything which was to awaken in them a passion that changed their lives forever after, and our lives as well. You'd never met the educator-turned-minister who, returning from a trip on church business, bestowed a tiny yet enormous gift to his boys, just an interested father named Milton Wright. All of your life you've known his sons Wilbur and Orville. Only now you know the rest of the... Now, the rest of the story.
Well, Paul was the quintessential storyteller. He had a knack for writing copy that somehow engaged you in the conversation or the story by drawing pictures using words. Of course, the current buzz about writing direct marketing sales copy is all about storytelling, and all brands want to write stories about their brands. When you do that using mass media like advertising, the result is often something confusing and not very effective for the brand. But when you start to talk to people one-on-one, like radio used to be, or one-on-one with a direct marketing pitch of some sort, it is often engaging and successful. Storytelling is both a natural skill and one that can be developed over time. To become a great storyteller, I've always believed that you needed to be creative and you needed to have an imagination. You needed to enjoy listening to and telling stories, and I think you have to have the ability and willingness to embellish the facts to make them seem more exciting. So as we go on with some of the other lectures in this set of lectures, we'll be talking more and more about learning to become a great storyteller. So this ought to be some of the fun part of the course.